The least thing tires me these days. I don't seem to have the energy I once had. My age, I guess. Weber looked at his friend. She looked rather swollen and she seemed listless. I'm awfully sorry to hear that you are feeling poorly, Charlotte, he said. Perhaps if you spin a web and catch a couple of flies, you'll feel better. Perhaps, she said wearily, but I feel like at the end of the long day. Clinging upside down to the ceiling, she settled down for a nap, leaving Wilbur very much worried. All morning, people wandered past Wilbur's pen. Dozens and dozens of strangers stopped to stare at him and to admire his silky white coat, his curly tail, his kind and radiant expression. Then they would move on to the next pen where the bigger pig lay. Wilbur heard several people make favorable remarks about Uncle's great size. He couldn't help overhearing these remarks, and he couldn't help worrying. And now, with Charlotte not feeling well, he thought, oh dear. All morning, Templeton slept quietly under the straw. The day grew fiercely hot. At noon, the Zuckermans and the Arabers returned to the pig pen. Then, a few minutes later, Fun and Avery showed up. Fun had a monkey doll in her arms and was eating Cracker Jack. Avery had a balloon tied to his ear and was chewing a candied apple. The children were hot and dirty. Isn't it hot? Said Mrs. Zuckerman. It's terribly hot, said Mrs. Arabelle, fanning herself with an advertisement of a deep freeze. One by one, they climbed into the truck and opened the lunch boxes. The sun hit down on everything. Nobody seemed hungry. When are the judges going to decide about Wilbur? Asked Mrs. Zuckerman. Not till tomorrow, said Mr. Zuckerman. Lurby appealed, carrying an Indian blanket that he had won. That's just what we need, said Avery, a blanket. Of course it is, replied Lurby, and he spread the blanket across the sideboards of the truck so that it was like a little tent. The children sat in the shade under the blanket and felt better. After lunch, they stretched out and fell asleep. Chapter 18. The Cool of the Evening. In the cool of the evening, when shadows darkened the fairgrounds, Templeton crept from the crate and looked around. Weber lay asleep in the straw. Charlotte was building a web. Templeton's keen nose detected many fine smells in the air. The rat was hungry and thirsty. He decided to go exploring. Without saying anything to anybody, he started off. Bring me back a word, Charlotte called after him. I shall be writing tonight for the last time. The rat mumbled something to himself and disappeared into the shadows. He did not like being treated like a messenger boy. After the heat of the day, the evening came as a welcome relief to all. The Ferris wheel was lighted now. It went round and round in the sky and seemed twice as high as by day. There were lights on the midway, and you could hear the cracker of the gambling machines and the music of a merry-go-round and the voice of the man in the Beano booth calling numbers. The children felt refreshed after their nap. Fawn met her friend Henry Fussy, and he invited her to ride with him in the Ferris wheel. He even bought a ticket for her, so it didn't cost her anything. When Mrs. Albert happened to look up into the starry sky and saw her little daughter sitting with Henry Fuss and going higher and higher into the air, and saw how happy Fawn looked, she just shook her head. My, she said. Henry Fussy, think of that. Templeton kept out of sight. In the tall grass behind the cattle barn, he found a folded newspaper. Inside it were leftovers from somebody's lunch. A deviled ham sandwich, a piece of Swiss cheese, a part of a hard-boiled egg, and a core of a wormy apple. The rat crawled in and ate everything. Then he tore a word out of the paper, rolled it up, and started back to Wilbur's pen. Charlotte had her web almost finished when Templeton returned, carrying the newspaper clipping. She had left a space in the middle of the web. At this hour, no people were around the pig pen, so the rat and the spider and the pig were by themselves.